In the busy city of New York, surrounded by tall buildings and noisy streets, there was a huge mansion that looked like something from another world. Behind its high black gates lived a man named Ethan Cole, a billionaire whose name everyone knew. People called him a genius businessman, a man who turned everything he touched into gold. But those who worked close to him knew the truth. He was a man living in silence, a man who had everything money could buy except happiness. Ethan's mansion was beautiful but lifeless. Expensive paintings covered the walls, golden chandeliers hung from the ceilings, and marble floors shone like mirrors. Yet there was no laughter, no warmth, no one to share his meals or talk to him at the end of the day. It was like a castle built for a king who had forgotten what love felt like. Every morning, he woke up to the sound of servants quietly cleaning, and every night, he went to sleep in a giant bed that felt colder than ice. Years ago, Ethan had been a different man. Kind, full of dreams, and deeply in love with his wife, Clara. They were the kind of couple people admired. She was gentle, graceful, and full of light. Clara often told Ethan that life wasn't about how much money they had, but how much love they shared. But one rainy night changed everything. Clara died in a car accident while coming home from one of Ethan's business parties. Since that day, something inside him broke. He stopped smiling. He stopped talking about his feelings. He threw himself into work, building companies and buying properties, maybe hoping that success would hide his pain. But it never did. The house became quieter with each passing year. Even the servants moved carefully, as if afraid to disturb the sadness that lived in the air. Ethan rarely spoke to them. He just gave orders and disappeared into his office, where he spent hours staring at numbers, deals, and papers. Anything that could keep him from thinking about the woman he lost. Sometimes, late at night, he would walk through the halls, stopping by Clara's old piano. It had been untouched for years. He would gently brush the dust off the keys but never play it. Her picture still stood on the grand piano, smiling, young, and full of life. That photo was the only thing in the entire house that felt alive to him. Ethan had no family left. His parents had passed away long ago, and he never had children. Friends had given up trying to visit him. He always said he was too busy. People called him the cold billionaire. But the truth was, he wasn't cold, he was broken. He had locked his heart away because feeling anything hurt too much. The staff often whispered stories about him. Some said he still talked to his wife's photo at night. Others said he sometimes sat in the dark for hours, just listening to the ticking of the clock. But no one really knew because Ethan never let anyone close. Until one day something changed. His old housekeeper, who had worked there for years, had to leave because of her health. The agency sent a replacement, a quiet woman named Maria. She was different from the others. She didn't talk much but worked with great care, cleaning every corner as if it were her own home. She never complained, even when the tasks were hard. Ethan noticed her, but only for a moment. To him, she was just another employee. However, what caught his attention wasn't Maria herself. It was the small girl who sometimes came with her. A little girl of about 8, with big brown eyes and messy hair, who waited quietly while her mother worked. Her name was Lily. Ethan first saw her one morning sitting on the staircase, holding a small stuffed bear that had a torn arm. She was whispering something to it, as if talking to a friend. When she noticed Ethan, she quickly stood up and bowed politely, just like she had seen her mother do. That small, innocent gesture surprised him. It had been years since anyone had looked at him that way, not with fear or respect, but with pure innocence. He didn't say a word, just gave a small nod and continued walking, but something about the child stayed in his mind. Days turned into weeks, and he kept noticing her. Sometimes she would wait in the corner of the kitchen, coloring on an old notepad. Sometimes she would quietly follow her mother, trying to help with small things, like folding towels or wiping tables with a cloth too big for her tiny hands. Ethan often pretended not to care, but he found himself watching her more and more. For the first time in years, the mansion didn't feel so empty. There was a different kind of energy, gentle, soft, almost like a whisper of life returning to the place. Ethan didn't understand it yet, but something inside him had started to change. The little girl's laughter, though rare, echoed through the halls and made the cold air feel a little warmer. One evening, as he sat by the window watching the city lights, he heard her giggling somewhere in the hall. It was a sound so pure that it brought back memories of Clara's laughter. For a brief moment, Ethan closed his eyes and smiled. A real smile, the kind he hadn't felt in years. He didn't know it yet, but this small maid's daughter was about to change his life completely. She was going to remind him what love, care, and family truly meant, things he thought he would never feel again. The mansion, once filled with silence and sorrow, was slowly beginning to breathe again. And all it took was the innocent heart of a little girl and her hard-working mother to awaken a billionaire's sleeping soul. Maria had lived a hard life long before she stepped into Ethan Cole's mansion. She was a woman in her late 30s, gentle in nature but strong in spirit. Every wrinkle on her hands told a story of struggle, years of working long hours, moving from one house to another, cleaning other people's homes to earn enough for her and her daughter, Lily. Life had never been kind to her, but Maria never let her heart turn bitter. She always believed that honesty and kindness would someday bring her peace, even if life kept testing her again and again. When she got the job at Ethan Cole's mansion, she couldn't believe it at first. The agency had told her that she would be working for a billionaire, a man known for being strict, private, and cold. Many maids had worked for him and left quickly because they couldn't handle the pressure or silence of that place. But Maria didn't have the luxury to refuse. She needed money to pay rent, buy medicine for Lily's weak lungs, and keep food on their small kitchen table. So, she accepted the offer without a second thought. On her first day, she arrived early in the morning, holding Lily's small hand tightly. The mansion looked massive and cold, almost like a museum. When the gate opened, Maria felt a mix of fear and awe. The marble floor shined so brightly that Lily's reflection appeared on it. The chandeliers sparkled above them like frozen stars, and the air smelled of expensive perfume and polished wood. But behind all that beauty, there was something missing: warmth. It felt like a house without a heartbeat. Maria met the head butler, Mr. Adams, who explained the rules of the mansion in a serious tone. "Mr. Cole doesn't like noise," he said. "He likes everything neat, quiet, and done on time. Never disturb him unless he calls for you." Maria nodded respectfully. She wasn't afraid of hard work. What worried her more was that she had no one to leave Lily with while she worked. Lily, being only 8, was quiet and shy but mature beyond her age. She understood her mother's struggles. So, she promised to stay silent and sit in a corner while Maria cleaned. "I'll be good, Mama," she whispered. "I won't disturb anyone." Maria kissed her forehead and smiled softly. "I know, my love." That day, Maria started her work. She cleaned the long hallways, dusted the giant bookshelves, and polished the floors until they looked new. Everything in the mansion was big: the rooms, the furniture, even the silence. It was the kind of silence that made you hear your own heartbeat. Ethan Cole didn't appear much that day. He stayed in his office, working as usual, buried under piles of documents. But once, while walking to his study, he caught a glimpse of Maria cleaning the window near the staircase. Her movements were slow but careful. She treated the mansion's furniture with the same respect she would treat her own things, even though they weren't hers. For a brief moment, Ethan paused. He noticed the little girl sitting quietly on a stool, drawing something on a small notepad. She wasn't like other children who would run around or make noise. She just looked peaceful. Ethan didn't say anything. He simply continued walking. For the next few days, Maria kept her routine simple. She arrived early, worked without complaint, and left quietly in the evening. Lily often came along because her mother couldn't afford a babysitter. The girl always carried her small teddy bear, the same one with a torn arm, and sat in the corner humming softly to herself. The other servants began to like her. Sometimes they gave her cookies or talked to her during breaks. Lily always smiled and said thank you politely. She reminded everyone of a ray of sunshine in that quiet, heavy place. One afternoon, Maria accidentally entered the wrong room, Ethan's late wife's music room. It was full of dust, but still beautiful. A grand piano stood in the middle, and pictures of a smiling woman were placed neatly on the table. Maria felt a strange sadness in the air. She quickly left, closing the door quietly, but her eyes were wet. Later, she told Lily softly, "Some people have everything, but they still carry pain that no one can see." Lily didn't fully understand, but she hugged her mother tightly. Sometimes, when Ethan passed by, Lily would wave shyly. He never waved back, but he also never scolded her. It was as if her presence didn't bother him, which, for him, was unusual. The staff noticed that he was slowly becoming less strict. He didn't shout for small mistakes anymore. The quiet mansion seemed to soften just a little. Maria never tried to talk to Ethan personally. She respected her place. To her, he was her employer, a man of great power and wealth, living in a world far from hers. But deep inside, she felt a small sense of sadness for him. There was something in his eyes, something that looked tired, lonely, and broken. She didn't know his story, but she could feel his pain. Meanwhile, Lily grew curious about the man who owned the house. She asked her mother once, "Mama, why does Mr. Ethan always look sad?" Maria didn't have an answer. She just said softly, "Because sometimes, people who look strong are the ones who hurt the most." And that's how the days passed. Maria cleaned, Lily waited, and Ethan worked. None of them knew that fate had quietly started connecting their lives. The billionaire didn't realize that the woman he barely noticed would soon touch his heart in a way no one else could. And Maria didn't know that the man she worked for, the man surrounded by gold, silence, and sadness, was going to change her life and her daughter's forever. The mansion, once a place of emptiness, had slowly started to breathe again. The sound of Lily's soft laughter, Maria's gentle humming while cleaning, and the smell of freshly baked bread from the kitchen began to replace the silence. Something was shifting, quietly, invisibly, like the first light of dawn after a long night. One evening, as the golden light of sunset poured through the tall windows of the mansion, Ethan walked toward his library, his favorite and most private room. The library was the only place in the entire mansion that still carried the warmth of his past. The scent of old books, the leather chairs, and the large portrait of his late wife, Clara, hanging above the fireplace always gave him a strange sense of comfort and pain at the same time. It was here that he spent most nights reading, thinking, and sometimes simply sitting in silence, remembering the laughter that once filled the room. That evening, something was different. When Ethan opened the door, he noticed a small figure standing near the bookshelf. At first, he frowned. No one was ever allowed in here without his permission. But when he stepped closer, he realized it was the maid's daughter, Lily. She was holding her teddy bear and staring up at the large portrait of Clara with wide, curious eyes. She didn't even notice him walk in. For a moment, Ethan just watched her. The little girl looked so innocent, so pure. She wasn't touching anything. She just stood there quietly, as if trying to understand the sadness in the painting. Finally, she turned and saw him. Her eyes widened, and she quickly stepped back, clutching her teddy bear tightly. "I'm sorry, sir," she said softly, her voice shaking a little. "I didn't mean to come here." The door was open. Ethan didn't say anything for a few seconds. He wasn't angry, just surprised. No one had ever spoken to him in that gentle, honest way for a long time. He looked at her small, nervous face and then at the portrait she had been staring at. "Do you know who that is?" he asked quietly. Lily nodded slowly. "Was she your wife?" she asked, her voice filled with curiosity, not fear. Ethan felt his throat tighten. It had been years since anyone had spoken about Clara. Most people avoided the topic, afraid of upsetting him. But this little girl had asked the question so simply, so innocently, that he couldn't feel angry. He nodded. "Yes," he said. "She was." Lily looked at the portrait again and smiled softly. "She looks kind," she said, "like someone who gives warm hugs." Ethan's eyes softened. He hadn't expected those words, but something about them touched his heart. For a moment, he could almost hear Clara's laugh in the room again. "She was kind," he whispered almost to himself. There was a short silence. Then Lily looked down at her small shoes and said, "My mom is kind too, but she's always sad. I think she misses being happy." Those words hit Ethan like a wave. He didn't know what to say. He just looked at her. This tiny girl who spoke with such pure truth. He wondered how someone so young could understand sadness so deeply. Before he could respond, Lily quickly added, "I'll go now. I didn't mean to bother you." She gave a small bow, just like her mother had taught her, and walked out quietly, her little steps echoing on the marble floor. Ethan stood there, frozen for a moment. He looked back at Clara's picture and then at the spot where Lily had stood. Something inside him felt strange, a mixture of warmth and pain. Those simple words, "She looks kind. My mom is kind too," kept replaying in his mind. That night, he couldn't focus on his work. He kept seeing the little girl's face, her honest eyes, her innocent smile, and her quiet sadness when she spoke about her mother. He realized that Maria, the maid, and her daughter weren't just two people working in his house. They were two souls fighting silently, just like him. They had their own pain, their own struggles. The next day, Ethan noticed things he hadn't before. When Maria was cleaning, he saw how tired she looked but how carefully she worked. He saw how Lily quietly waited for her mother, never complaining, never asking for toys or food, just sitting patiently. He realized they didn't have much, yet they carried a kind of strength that he had long lost. One afternoon, while passing through the kitchen, Ethan saw Maria giving half of her lunch to Lily. He stopped for a second, hidden behind the doorway. Maria didn't know he was watching. She smiled at her daughter and said, "Eat, my love. I'll eat later." But Ethan saw that she never did. He understood now. She was skipping her own meals so her daughter could eat. That image stayed in his heart. That night, he couldn't sleep again. He kept thinking about Lily's words, "My mom is kind, but she's always sad." He realized how true that was. Maria was kind, kind in silence, kind in sacrifice. And Lily, despite being a child, carried the wisdom of someone who had seen too much of life too early. The next morning, Ethan did something he had never done before. When Maria came to the library to clean, she found a small basket of fresh fruits and sandwiches on the table with a note that said, "For you and Lily." She was surprised. No one ever left her gifts or food. She looked around, confused, but Ethan wasn't there. He had left early for a meeting. When Lily saw the basket, her face lit up. "Mama, look, someone gave us food." Maria smiled gently, though her eyes filled with tears. She knew who it was, but she didn't say anything. Instead, she whispered a small prayer for the man who had unknowingly started to open his heart again. From that day, things began to shift slowly. The mansion, once filled with only silence, now had soft laughter echoing in its corners. The little girl's presence brought a touch of innocence and life that even the billionaire couldn't ignore. Ethan didn't understand why, but he found himself looking forward to seeing her small smile every morning. And though he didn't know it yet, that short conversation in the library, the moment Lily looked at his wife's picture and said those simple, truthful words, was the beginning of a change that would heal not only his lonely heart, but also the lives of the two people he never thought he'd care for. As the days passed, Ethan began to notice Maria more closely, though he never said anything. Before, she had just been another member of the staff. Quiet, polite, and hardworking. But after that evening in the library with Lily, something in him had changed. He started paying attention to small things. The way Maria moved through the mansion, how she gently spoke to her daughter, how she smiled even when she was tired. There was something graceful about her, something real that money couldn't buy. Every morning, Maria would arrive early, carrying her small bag and holding Lily's hand. Lily always gave her mother a quick hug before finding her quiet spot to sit and draw. The two of them shared a bond that was beautiful to watch. Even though they had little in life, they seemed rich in love and patience. Ethan, sitting in his office, sometimes found himself watching them through the window when they didn't notice. One day, while walking through the hallway, he overheard two servants whispering. They were talking about Maria. One said, "She doesn't eat lunch most days. She saves the food for her daughter." The other replied, "She told me she used to work in 3 houses before this one, just to make enough for rent." Ethan stopped for a moment, listening quietly. He didn't like gossip, but this time the words made his heart heavy. Later that day, he saw it for himself. Maria was cleaning the grand dining room while Lily sat nearby, nibbling on a sandwich. Ethan noticed that Maria only drank water, pretending she wasn't hungry. When Lily offered her half the sandwich, Maria smiled and said, "I'm not hungry, sweetheart. You eat. That's enough for me." Ethan could see the lie in her eyes, but also the love. That night, as he sat in his library, Ethan couldn't focus on his work. He had built companies, earned billions, bought mansions across the world. But seeing a mother give up her meal for her child made him feel small. He had everything, yet he couldn't remember the last time he had done something that pure or selfless. The next morning, Ethan asked his cook to prepare extra breakfast for the staff. He didn't want to embarrass Maria by singling her out. But when the cook served the food, he made sure there was a warm meal waiting for her and Lily. When Maria saw it, she looked confused. "Sir, I think there's been a mistake," she told the cook politely. "This is too much." The cook smiled and said, "Mr. Cole's orders, ma'am." Maria didn't know what to say. She thanked him softly and sat with Lily to eat. For the first time in a long while, both of them ate until they were full. Ethan watched from a distance, pretending to read a newspaper, but secretly feeling something stir inside him. A quiet kind of happiness. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan found small ways to make their lives easier. When he learned that Maria walked 2 miles every day to reach the bus stop, he arranged for the driver to drop them home after work. When Lily's shoes tore, a new pair appeared in the house the next morning with no note attached. Maria tried to refuse the gifts, but Ethan told her gently, "It's not charity, it's appreciation." She didn't argue after that, but her eyes showed a deep gratitude. Still, Maria never crossed her limits. She always treated Ethan with respect and distance. She never asked for more than she was given, never spoke about her struggles, and never took advantage of his kindness. She just kept doing her work faithfully. That quiet dignity only made Ethan respect her more. One evening, a heavy rainstorm hit the city. The mansion was warm inside, but Ethan saw from his office window that Maria and Lily were waiting by the gate after work, both holding a single small umbrella. The driver had already left for the day. The sight of the little girl shivering under the rain made something twist inside him. Without thinking, Ethan took his car keys and walked out. "Maria," he called. She turned, surprised to see him coming out in the rain. "Get in. I'll drop you home." "Oh no, sir, that's not necessary," she said quickly, her voice trembling. "We can manage." But before she could protest again, Lily sneezed. Ethan frowned. "It's not safe. Please, get in." His tone was gentle but firm. Maria hesitated for a moment, then finally nodded. "Thank you, sir," she said softly, helping Lily into the back seat. The drive was quiet. Lily looked out the window in awe. She had never sat in such a luxurious car before. Ethan asked, "How far is your home?" Maria gave short directions, clearly embarrassed by her modest neighborhood. When they reached, Ethan saw a small, old building with peeling paint and flickering lights. He felt a lump in his throat. No one living there should have to walk miles to clean someone else's mansion. As they got out, Lily turned to him and said, "Thank you, Mr. Ethan." Her voice was sweet and sincere. He smiled, a real smile this time. "You're welcome, Lily. Take care of your mom." After they went inside, Ethan sat in his car for a moment, staring at the rain. He thought about his own life. The empty halls, the silent dinners, the loneliness he had created around himself. And then he thought of them. A mother and daughter who had almost nothing, yet shared more love than he ever had in years. From that day forward, Ethan began to see the world differently. The walls of his mansion didn't feel so tall anymore. He started greeting the staff, thanking them, and even smiling sometimes. Maria and Lily had unknowingly brought light back into his life, a warmth that he thought was lost forever. He didn't fully understand it yet, but something deep inside him was changing. The loneliness that had haunted him for years was slowly melting away, replaced by a quiet admiration for a mother's love and a little girl's innocence. He was beginning to realize that true wealth wasn't in money or power. It was in kindness, sacrifice, and the small moments that touched the heart. Winter arrived early that year, covering the city in soft layers of snow. The mansion looked beautiful from the outside, glowing with golden lights against the white landscape. But inside, the cold air seemed to linger no matter how many fires burned in the fireplace. Ethan was working longer hours again, trying to focus on business, but his thoughts often wandered to Maria and Lily. He didn't want to admit it, but their presence had started to matter to him. The little girl's laughter, Maria's quiet kindness. They made the silence in his house feel less painful. One evening, when the wind was howling outside and snowflakes danced across the windows, Ethan noticed that Maria hadn't finished her usual tasks. The floors in the main hallway were only half polished, and the dusting in his office wasn't done. That was unlike her. She was always punctual and careful. At first, he assumed she must have left early because of the snowstorm. But then he heard hurried footsteps and faint voices coming from the kitchen. When he went to check, he found the other staff members gathered around Maria. She had fainted. Her face was pale, and her hands were trembling. Lily was crying, holding her mother's arm and calling her name again and again. "Mama, wake up. Please, Mama." Ethan's heart raced. He had never seen Lily cry before, and the sight broke him. Without thinking, he rushed forward. "Call the doctor now," he ordered the butler, then gently lifted Maria and carried her to the guest room himself. Her body felt light, almost too light, and he realized she must have been skipping meals again. Lily followed, still sobbing softly, clutching her teddy bear. When the doctor arrived, he checked Maria carefully and said, "She's exhausted, overworked and undernourished. Her body needs rest and proper food. She's been pushing herself too hard." Ethan's jaw tightened. He remembered how many times he had seen her skip meals and pretend she wasn't hungry. The guilt hit him like a wave. The doctor gave her some medicine and told her to rest for at least a week. When he left, Lily looked up at Ethan with teary eyes and whispered, "Please don't fire her. She didn't mean to get sick. She just wanted to finish her work." Her voice trembled with fear and innocence. Ethan knelt down beside her and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I would never fire her, Lily," he said softly. "Your mom needs to rest. She'll be fine, I promise." He said it calmly, but inside his heart felt heavy. He sat beside Maria's bed for a while, watching her breathe. Her face looked peaceful but tired, as if life had demanded too much from her. Lily climbed up on the chair next to him, holding her mother's hand tightly. "She always tells me not to worry," Lily said quietly. "But I can see when she's tired. She smiles even when it hurts." Ethan didn't know how to respond. He simply nodded, feeling something deep inside him shift. That night, he asked the staff to prepare warm soup and light food for Maria and Lily. When she finally opened her eyes later that evening, she was surprised to see Ethan sitting there. "Sir, I'm sorry," she whispered weakly. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." "Don't apologize," he said firmly but kindly. "You're not in trouble. You need to take care of yourself." Maria tried to sit up, embarrassed. "I can't rest, sir. There's still work." Ethan stopped her gently. "Maria, please. The house can wait." "You can't." Tears welled up in her eyes. No one had ever spoken to her that way before, not with authority but with care. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. That night, Ethan made sure Maria and Lily stayed in the mansion instead of going home in the cold. He had a guest room prepared for them, warm and cozy, with extra blankets. Lily was delighted. "It feels like a hotel, Mama," she giggled. Maria smiled faintly, grateful yet unsure how to react to such kindness from her employer. Over the next few days, Ethan checked on them every morning. He brought soup himself sometimes, pretending it was nothing. "The cook made too much," he would say, placing the tray down. But Maria knew. She could see the quiet concern in his eyes, though he tried to hide it behind his usual serious expression. Lily, meanwhile, had started talking to him more. She told him stories about her school, her favorite cartoons, and how her teddy bear's name was Mr. Buttons. Ethan found himself smiling at her words, something he hadn't done in years. She reminded him of a life he once dreamed of, a home filled with laughter, not loneliness. One afternoon, as Maria rested, Ethan sat in the living room reading a book. Lily walked up to him holding a drawing she had made. "This is you, Mr. Ethan," she said proudly. The drawing showed him standing beside her and her mother, all three of them smiling under a big sun. He looked at it quietly, his throat tightening. "You're quite the artist," he said softly. Lily grinned. "I drew you happy. You don't smile much." Her honesty hit him hard. For a moment he didn't know what to say. He just nodded and whispered, "Maybe I'll start trying." That evening, Maria came out of her room, still weak but looking better. "Sir," she said quietly, "thank you for everything you've done. You didn't have to." Ethan looked at her and replied, "Maybe not, but sometimes doing the right thing doesn't need a reason." Maria's eyes filled with tears again. She had met many rich people before, but none who spoke with such quiet sincerity. In that moment, something unspoken passed between them. A small spark of connection, built not on wealth or power, but on humanity. From that day on, Ethan made sure Maria never overworked herself again. He ordered the staff to help her with tasks and told the cook to always prepare extra food for Lily. The mansion felt different now, warmer, lighter, alive. But more than that, Ethan felt different. The loneliness that had once surrounded him was slowly fading, replaced by something he hadn't felt in years: care. He didn't realize it yet, but this was the beginning of a bond that would change all three of their lives forever. And it all began on that cold winter night, when a billionaire found compassion in the tears of a little girl who just wanted her mother to be okay. Days passed, and Maria slowly recovered. The mansion felt livelier now. Laughter could be heard in the hallways, especially whenever Lily was around. Ethan had gotten used to seeing the little girl running about, drawing pictures, or humming songs while her mother worked. It was something he had never experienced before. A home that actually felt alive. One morning, Maria tried to return to her usual duties, but Ethan stopped her. "You don't need to rush," he said calmly. "Take it easy for a few more days." "I'm fine now, sir," she replied with a soft smile. "I can't just sit and do nothing." Ethan sighed but couldn't help smiling. "You're stubborn," he said gently. "And grateful," she replied quietly, meeting his eyes for a brief moment. There was warmth in her gaze, the kind that made Ethan's heart beat faster, though he didn't understand why. Lily interrupted the moment by rushing in, holding a small box. "Mr. Ethan, look what I made," she said excitedly. Inside were 2 tiny paper rings. "This one's for you, and this one's for Mama. Now you're best friends forever." Ethan laughed. A genuine laugh that surprised even him. "Best friends forever, huh? That's a big promise." Lily nodded seriously. "Mama says real friends take care of each other. You take care of us. So now you're our friend." Maria blushed, shaking her head. "Lily, don't trouble Mr. Ethan." But Ethan knelt down, taking the paper ring gently. "It's no trouble," he said softly. "I'll keep it safe." He slipped it onto his finger and smiled at her. Lily beamed with pride. "See, Mama? He likes it." Maria smiled too, though her heart felt heavy with mixed emotions. Gratitude, warmth, and a strange kind of fear. She knew her place in his world. He was a billionaire and she was just a maid. But Lily saw no difference, and that innocence was both beautiful and heartbreaking. Later that week, Ethan had to attend a charity event at a luxury hotel. Before leaving, he checked on Maria and Lily. "Will you two be all right tonight?" he asked. "Yes, sir," Maria said politely. "We'll be fine." "Good," he replied, smiling faintly. "I'll try not to stay too late." That evening, the grand ballroom was full of powerful people. Businessmen, politicians, and celebrities. Everyone was dressed in luxury, but Ethan felt strangely disconnected. The laughter and fake smiles around him made him miss the simple warmth of home. He found himself thinking about Lily's paper ring, still tucked safely in his pocket. While the speeches dragged on, he received a message from the mansion's housekeeper. "Sir, Miss Lily isn't feeling well. She has a fever." Without a second thought, Ethan left the event early. People stared in surprise. No one had ever seen the billionaire walk out of an important gathering so suddenly. But he didn't care. When he reached the mansion, Maria was sitting beside Lily's bed, holding a cool cloth to her forehead. The little girl was restless, whispering softly in her sleep. "Mama, don't go." Maria looked up, startled to see Ethan. "Sir, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bother you. She just got sick so suddenly." Ethan came closer and felt Lily's forehead. "She's burning up," he said, worried. "Did you call the doctor?" "Yes, he's on his way," Maria replied, trying to stay calm, but her eyes were red from crying. Ethan sat beside them, staying quiet for a while. When the doctor arrived and gave Lily medicine, Maria finally relaxed a little. The doctor said it was just a fever from exhaustion and the cold, nothing too serious. But Ethan could see the fear in Maria's face. After the doctor left, Maria whispered, "She's all I have in this world." Her voice broke as she looked at her daughter's small, sleeping face. "If anything ever happens to her, I don't know what I'd do." Ethan looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time, he saw the strength it took to raise a child alone, to work tirelessly to keep smiling through pain. Something inside him softened completely. "Nothing will happen to her," he said firmly. "Not while I'm here." Maria turned to him, her eyes filled with tears. "You've already done too much for us," she whispered. Ethan shook his head. "No, Maria. You and Lily have done something for me." She looked confused. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, his voice softer now. "You've reminded me what it means to care for someone. For years I thought money and success were enough. But you and Lily, you've brought life back into this house, into me." For a moment there was silence. The only sound was Lily's slow breathing. Maria didn't know how to respond. Her heart was racing, and she could feel tears forming again. She quickly turned away, whispering, "Thank you, sir." Ethan stayed beside them until late at night. He didn't leave even when Maria told him to rest. "You need sleep," she said softly. "So do you," he replied. "We'll both stay here, just in case she wakes up." Hours passed, and they both drifted off in chairs beside Lily's bed. When morning came, the fever had gone down. Lily opened her eyes and smiled weakly. "Mr. Ethan, you stayed here?" He smiled back. "Of course I did. Someone had to make sure my best friend got better." Lily laughed softly, and even Maria couldn't help smiling. There was a warmth in that moment, something pure and unspoken. From that day on, Ethan spent more time with them. He would take Lily for walks in the garden, tell her stories about his travels, and even teach her how to play chess. Maria often watched from a distance, her heart full but confused. She didn't understand why a man of his wealth and status would care so deeply for a maid and her daughter. But Ethan knew. He had found something more valuable than anything money could buy, a feeling of belonging, of family. And though neither of them said it aloud, both knew that something special was growing between them, something that could change their lives forever. The days that followed were filled with calm and warmth, something Ethan hadn't felt in years. The mansion, once silent and cold, now had laughter echoing in its halls. Lily was completely recovered, running around the garden and filling every corner with joy. Ethan had grown fond of her. She reminded him of innocence, of the part of life he had long forgotten. Maria, too, seemed happier now. Her smile came more easily, though deep inside, she still felt unsure about what their closeness meant. One sunny afternoon, Ethan decided to surprise them. He had arranged a small picnic in the mansion's garden. Nothing grand, just a simple blanket, some food, and fresh flowers. When Maria came out and saw it, she looked at him in disbelief. "Sir, what is all this?" she asked almost shyly. He smiled. "It's a day off for both of you. You've both been working too hard." Lily squealed with excitement. "A picnic? Mama, can we?" Maria hesitated for a moment, then nodded with a gentle smile. All right. They sat under a large oak tree. The sunlight filtered through the leaves, creating golden patterns on the grass. Lily giggled as she fed crumbs to the birds, and Ethan couldn't stop watching her smile. She's really something, he said quietly. Maria looked at her daughter, her eyes full of love. She's my whole world, she replied softly. Ethan nodded. She's lucky to have you. Maria glanced at him, unsure how to respond. I just do my best, she said humbly. That's all a mother can do. For a few moments there was comfortable silence, the kind that didn't need words. The wind was soft, the air smelled of roses, and everything felt peaceful. Ethan found himself thinking how strange it was that something so simple could feel so perfect. After a while, Lily ran to the flower bushes and began picking daisies. I'm making crowns, she announced proudly. One for Mama and one for you, Mr. Ethan. Ethan chuckled. Crowns? So we'll be royalty now. Yes, Lily said, giggling. You'll be the king, Mama will be the queen, and I'll be the princess. Maria tried to stop her, blushing. Lily, that's enough. But Lily ran up to them and placed a daisy crown on Maria's head, then one on Ethan's. There. Now you look perfect together. Maria froze, her cheeks turning red. Ethan, on the other hand, smiled warmly, amused by the little girl's innocence. Well, thank you, princess, he said softly. Lily laughed and went back to her flowers, leaving Maria and Ethan sitting side by side. The air grew quiet again, but this time it was filled with something deeper, an unspoken connection that neither could ignore. After a long pause, Ethan finally spoke. Maria, can I ask you something? She turned to him slowly. Of course, sir. Why did you start working here? You could have chosen easier jobs. Being a maid in such a big house isn't easy. Maria sighed, looking down at her hands. It wasn't a choice, really. I needed the money. After Lily's father left, I had no one to help me. This job was the only way I could give her a better life. Ethan felt his chest tighten. I'm sorry, he said quietly. She shook her head. Don't be. Life has been hard, but Lily keeps me strong. When I see her smile, it makes everything worth it. He watched her for a moment, admiring her strength and grace. You're stronger than you think, Maria, he said softly. Most people would have given up. She looked at him, eyes glistening. Sometimes I wanted to, she admitted. But then I'd remember, I can't afford to be weak. Not when she depends on me. Ethan nodded slowly, his respect for her deepening. He had met powerful people all his life. Politicians, business tycoons, millionaires, but none had the quiet courage that Maria carried. Just then, Lily ran back, holding something behind her back. Close your eyes, she said excitedly. Ethan and Maria both laughed but obeyed. Okay, now open, Lily shouted. When they opened their eyes, Lily was holding a small paper card. On it, written in her messy handwriting, were the words, Please marry my mom. Maria gasped. Lily, she said, half scolding, half embarrassed. Ethan was speechless. His heart seemed to stop for a moment. He looked at the little girl who stood there smiling innocently. You always take care of us, Lily said softly. I want you to stay with us forever. Maria quickly knelt down beside her. Lily, sweetheart, you can't just say things like that. But it's true, Lily insisted. You like him, Mama, and he likes you. I can tell. Maria froze. She didn't know what to say. Her face burned with embarrassment, but deep inside, her heart was pounding wildly. Ethan was still sitting there, quiet, trying to process what just happened. Finally, he took a deep breath and smiled at Lily. That's very sweet of you, Lily, he said gently. But marriage is a big thing. You can't rush it. Lily looked a little disappointed. So, you don't like Mama? Ethan hesitated, his eyes meeting Maria's. I do, he said softly. Your mom is a very special. Maria's breath caught in her throat. For a moment, she forgot how to breathe. She looked away quickly, pretending to fix Lily's hair to hide her face. Ethan smiled faintly and stood up. "Come on," he said, trying to lighten the mood. "Let's go inside before it gets cold." As they walked back toward the mansion, Lily skipped happily ahead, humming to herself. But Maria and Ethan walked silently behind her, both lost in thought. That night, Maria lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her mind replayed the afternoon again and again. The picnic, Ethan's smile, and Lily's innocent wish. She knew it was impossible. He was a billionaire and she was a maid. Their worlds were too far apart. But her heart refused to listen to reason. In another part of the mansion, Ethan sat alone in his study, holding the little card Lily had made. Her words echoed in his mind. "Please marry my mom." He smiled to himself, then sighed deeply. For the first time in years, he didn't think about business, money, or success. All he could think about was a humble maid and her brave little daughter, and how they had filled the emptiness in his heart without even trying. What started as kindness had turned into something deeper, something that scared him and comforted him at the same time. And though neither of them knew it yet, Lily's innocent words had planted a seed that would soon change everything. The next morning, the mansion was quiet. The soft sunlight came through the large windows, painting golden lines across the floor. Maria was in the kitchen, preparing breakfast, trying to forget the embarrassing moment from the picnic. But no matter how hard she tried, Lily's innocent words kept echoing in her mind. "Please marry my mom." She could still remember Ethan's face when Lily said it. The surprise, the warmth in his eyes, and the way he looked at her afterward. It made her heart beat faster every time she thought about it. She kept telling herself it was foolish. He was her boss, a billionaire, and she was just a maid with a small daughter. Their worlds didn't mix. But deep inside, she knew something had changed. Ethan was no longer just her employer. He had become someone she trusted, someone she couldn't stop thinking about. Meanwhile, in his office upstairs, Ethan was staring at his desk, but not really seeing anything. In front of him lay the small paper card Lily had made, with the words "Please marry my mom" written in crooked letters. He had looked at it at least 100 times since last night. Each time it made him smile, then think, then sigh. He couldn't deny the truth anymore. He cared about them not just as a boss or a friend. He had fallen for Maria. Her kindness, her strength, her quiet beauty. She had changed his life. She made his big empty house feel like a home again. But he was afraid. What if she didn't feel the same way? What if she thought he was just pitying her? He didn't want to make things awkward or hurt her pride. For a man who controlled billion-dollar companies, Ethan suddenly felt powerless when it came to his own heart. That evening, after dinner, Lily was playing in the living room while Maria was cleaning up. Ethan walked in holding 2 cups of tea. "You've done enough for today," he said softly, setting 1 cup in front of her. "Sit for a while." Maria hesitated, but he smiled warmly. "Please, just a few minutes." She nodded quietly and sat down. For a moment, neither spoke. The fire crackled in the fireplace, and the sound of Lily's laughter filled the room. Finally, Ethan spoke. "Lily's quite a brave little girl," he said with a small smile. Maria sighed, half embarrassed, half laughing. "She says whatever comes to her mind. I hope she didn't offend you yesterday." Ethan shook his head. "Offend me? No. She just said something that made me think." Maria looked up, curious but cautious. "Think about what?" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "About what really matters," he said quietly. "I've spent most of my life chasing money, power, success. All the things people say are important, but they never made me happy. Then you and Lily came along, and suddenly this house didn't feel empty anymore." Maria's breath caught. She didn't know how to respond. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "Say nothing," he said gently. "Just know that you've both given me something I thought I'd lost a long time ago. Family." Maria's eyes filled with tears. She turned away, pretending to sip her tea, but her hands trembled slightly. "You've been very kind to us," she whispered. "More than anyone ever has. I'll never forget that." Ethan looked at her, his heart full. For a long time he said nothing. Then, in a low voice, he asked, Maria, if I told you I don't want you and Lily to ever leave this house, what would you say? Maria froze. She looked at him, unsure if she had heard right. What do you mean? He took a deep breath. I mean, I want you to stay, not as employees, but as part of my life, as family. Her heart pounded. Sir, please, don't say that, she said, her voice trembling. You don't have to do this out of kindness. This isn't kindness, he said firmly. It's love. The words hung in the air like music. Maria's eyes widened. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Ethan continued, his voice steady but full of emotion. I tried to ignore it, but I can't. I've fallen in love with you, Maria. With your strength, your heart, your honesty. You and Lily have brought me peace I never knew I needed. And if you'd let me, I want to take care of you both. Not as your boss, but as your family. Maria couldn't speak. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. All her life, she had faced rejection, hardship, and loneliness. And now here was a man, powerful, rich, respected, telling her she was loved. I don't know what to say, she whispered finally. Say what's in your heart, he said softly. She looked down, her voice breaking. I never thought someone like you could ever care about someone like me. I spent my whole life being invisible. But you saw me. You saw Lily. And that means more than anything. Ethan smiled gently. So, is that a yes? Maria laughed through her tears. You're serious? Completely, he said with a warm smile. Though I might have to ask Lily's permission first. Just then, a little voice interrupted from behind the couch. You don't have to ask, Mr. Ethan, Lily said, grinning. I already said yes for Mama. They both turned to see Lily standing there, holding the same paper card. She had been listening the whole time. Maria gasped. Lily, were you spying again? Lily giggled. I just wanted to see if you'd say yes. Ethan laughed and picked her up. Well, looks like you got your wish, princess. Maria shook her head, laughing through her tears. She couldn't believe this was happening. Ethan turned to her and said softly, Maria, will you let me make this official? She hesitated only for a moment, then smiled. A smile full of love and hope. Yes, she whispered. I will. Lily clapped her hands joyfully. Yay, we're a family now. Ethan hugged them both tightly, feeling a warmth he had never known before. That night, the mansion glowed brighter than ever. For the first time, it wasn't just a house, it was a home. Ethan, Maria, and Lily sat by the fire, laughing together like a real family. And as Lily fell asleep in her mother's arms, Ethan looked at Maria and said softly, Thank you for bringing love back into my life. Maria smiled back, whispering, And thank you for giving us a new beginning. Outside, the stars shone brighter than ever, as if blessing a love story that had started with a child's innocent wish and ended with a promise that would last forever.